I took a comic book from very fine all the way to near mint, and here's how I did it. Hey there, today I have a comic book pressing video. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I took a book that I had graded an 8.0 all the way up to, let's just say, the near mint range. It was quite a drastic improvement, I think. It was a modern book, and the particular book that I worked on, it was generally for practice. I had taken a long break from comic book pressing, and because I was really kind of at a crossroads with pressing, I had actually reached out to several comic book pressers online and started to sort of interview them in a way to figure out if I could use their services and what it would cost me and so forth. And I do have some books out with one of those pressers, and it's still just trying to get a feel for building up, some trust with those individuals and trying to figure out, can I use them as part of my process in terms of buying books, assessing them, getting them cleaned up, improved, sending off for grading, and is this really a process that I can run end to end? And I have slowed down with some of my grading submissions because I haven't trusted myself to press books or clean them myself. And I am just trying to figure out, if I'm not going to press all of my books, what kind of books could I press on my own that would save me some money and some time versus some other books that I feel like really need to be in the hands of a professional, where I can just send them off. They can be looked after and cared after. Whereas I can have a book like this, which is a near brand new release and something that maybe doesn't have a lot of initial monetary value, but could have some potential and things like that. So I wanted to try and figure out not necessarily how to press comic books, but which comic books would I press? And so that's sort of the premise here. And in the sequence of video clips that I'm about to share with you, this is really taking this specific book, Star Wars Halcyon Legacy #3. This is the variant copy, and how I went from the initial assessment of the book all the way through the final stages of pressing. Now, one thing that really kind of got me back into it was I had felt very discouraged. And I was trying to think to myself, well, if I were to either start my own pressing business or I was learning to press from scratch, but it's still me, like, how would I do it? I would think about it analytically. And what I forced myself to do is to create a digital log where I can actually go into this worksheet and describe the steps that I took to press the book in very, very specific detail. I even note in some of these videos how I'm measuring pressure on the press now, looking at temperature, age of the book, and so forth. My goal is really to figure out if there are some genres or eras or types of specific physical comic books that I'd be willing to press or have success with. Let me try to find a way to be able to repeat that success. I used to haphazardly go into a pressing situation and kind of guess on the pressure or just kind of think about what I did before. And I wasn't writing anything down and I wasn't tracking anything. And I was just thinking to myself that I think that was part of my frustration, is I was not really taking good detailed notes to really look at the history of how did I improve a book or how did I destroy a book? What went wrong? What went right? And really looking at things kind of in a retrospective type of analytical format. And I do this with comic book collecting, but I wasn't doing it with comic book pressing. So I think that once I started to look at it that way, for me personally, that was interesting, and I got excited about it. So I'll share a little bit along the way of how I tracked some of this information that really kind of motivated me to keep up with the different steps and stages of the pressing experiments, right? So I think in the end, what I did figure out is, while I took a lot of steps to press this book, I think that if I were to do it again, there were things that I learned along the way that I would cut out to speed up the process, because ultimately I want a repeatable process, but I need it to be fast and I need it to be reliable. So I'm going to show you the sequence of clips of how I took the book from the condition that I got it in. And it was a copy that I pulled out of a Midtown order, where the Midtown order I received was completely and thoroughly damaged. They packaged the order in a square box. I don't know if you remember watching that video, but the books were laying diagonally in the box. It was almost like they were trying to punish me as a customer. I really still can't figure out why somebody packaged comic books the way that they did. They were bagged and boarded, but they were all kind of folding over. So when you see the initial assessment of this comic book, you'll see some of those folds and bends right there on the front cover. And since these were all basically downgraded by me to reader copies, I figured what better use for these books than to practice on them for pressing as if they were some free comic book day books. They in my mind, they were basically in the 6.0 to 8.5 type range after receiving them damaged. So why not breathe new life into them? You could read them, you could press them, have some fun with them. And I think, again, I learned a lot from this specific video. I hope you enjoy these clips. I hope it's informative. I hope it's entertaining. And you can always leave some comments on this video if you have any advice or suggestions for me. So let's get to the clips, starting with the first clip that assesses the book, showing you the condition that it started out in. All right, here is the review of the book. This is a book that I kind of classify as getting the Midtown Special treatment. And I'm just going to kind of give it a once over and use the light to angle in here. And a lot of what happened with this book in particular was a lot of just general bending that created a lot of the folds like this here and here. Also in the top corner, got a problem up there as well. Nothing really color breaking, I would say. Possibly there, maybe. Looks good otherwise. Just, again, a lot of rippling and folding throughout the book. Otherwise, a very, very nice, clean comic. You typically see this as an LCS mark, like reader's copy. You could pick it up off the shelf and just take a look. It looks okay. It's just a lot of just warping, folding, bending, and so forth. And so that's the front cover. Flip it over. Again, more of the same here along the side. Lots of bends, lots of folds. Some of it's the Marvel paper, but really this thing was just beat up in transit. Just kind of going over it a little bit more. Back doesn't look as bad. And then, you know, if I'm thinking about using a real book for pressing, I would definitely look at this down here on the bottom edge of the book. You know, almost like it sat on the shelf in a way and just sort of rubbed against the bottom of the shelf. In this case, you're going to see books like this that look absolutely perfect come back in a 9.6 or a 9.4, because what CGC will end up doing is they'll measure and say this is about, oh, it's probably an inch or to an inch and a half of damage on the bottom, so it's not going to get a 9.8 because of that. But this is a good book to practice on, to see if we can get it pretty flat. And I think overall, I'm not going to apply humidity in the first pass. I really just want to see what would a standard quick press do to a book to get out, you know, just little defects like that right there. I don't believe that the press is going to fully get the corner to lay flat. That's just bent up in this direction. So I do feel like if I really wanted to get something like that, I'd have to apply humidity. But what I want to do is I just want to try a quick press of this Star Wars Halcyon Legacy 3 to just see what a quick press would do, start to finish. So now I'm going to get the book ready for the first round of pressing. All right, so one of the big things with my press for some reason is I cannot figure out the proper pressure for comic book pressing, and so what I decided to do, I just put a piece of painter's tape with an arrow where I'm going to actually count and adjust and keep track of how many turns of the dial, how many rotations around for figuring out pressure. I know that there's some tools where you could actually put in the press here and measure pressure. Some presses have a pressure dial. Those presses are several $100s, which I'm don't really want to pay for. This is kind of a, I'd say like an Amazon standard type of press. So I'm going to try this and I'm going to track this now. And it's very, very primitive and basic, I understand. But that is something that I've wanted to figure out, is how do I, pun intended, really dial in the pressure. So when I'm tracking a specific type of book, so many pages, a certain era, paper type, things like that, I want to be able to understand every time how to properly set the pressure based on the sandwich and everything else that I'm doing. So I want to just point that out as a little bit of a change that I'm trying. Okay, so for this specific book, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and follow the Captain Mike specific guidelines. And for this book being a modern book, a modern age release, which he classifies as 2012 and up, according to what is in his guide, it is 150 degrees for 10 minutes. So I'm going to flip the press on and go into the settings here to 150. I'm going to set the timer for 600 seconds. That looks good. Hit OK. And then what I also want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and let it warm up for those 10 minutes. So I do want to preheat the press. The only thing that's inside the press right now is a solid metal plate. So that is for the bottom, because the bottom of the press does have a pad. So I have a 10 by 10 steel plate that will be heated up, as will the top part of the press. But again, using Captain Mike's guidelines, he also recommends a top plate. So I'll be adding a top plate on top of the comic book and the comic book pressing sandwich once we press. So I'm going to go ahead and let this heat up. All right, so I'm ready to put the sandwich together. And again, just following the guides, essentially what I need is 2 pieces of 65-pound cardstock, which I've indicated there. 65, when you start using these, I know you're supposed to use one and done and throw them out, but sometimes I reuse them for other purposes, such as, you know, going along the spine with a tack iron and so forth, just kind of, you know, putting a temporary sandwich together to protect the book. So I like to just remember the difference between inkjet 65-pound and 100 or 110-pound cardstock. And then I've got a couple pieces of silicone release paper that is supposed to go outside of the comic cover. And then I am going to use 3 magazine backing boards, 1 for each of the front and back cover, and 1 for the centerfold to protect the staples. I had been moving away from these. I know that Captain Mike does say in his guide that for the exterior cardstock, it's recommended to use 1 magazine backing board. You could use 3 magazine backer boards if you're not using any steel plates or 110-pound cardstock, but I think it's pretty standard to use these magazine backing boards. And same goes for the center fold protection. You could use a couple sheets of 110-pound where you're maybe putting 1 on each side of the staple. But I'm just going to do this the standard, hopefully easier way. So now I'm going to create the sandwich. Now, one of the other things to look out for are things like inserts. And in books like this, you typically have a digital insert. And right here, it's talking about how you don't want to miss out on the digital edition. But I've noticed this sometimes with some of these modern books. The digital sticker, the code, is just missing. And so you want to check for that. If there is that sticker, you're going to have to add additional protection around that specific page. But in this case, I get to skip it. I don't really know or understand if this is a manufacturing thing. I think CGC probably flips through the book, and if there's a code with the sticker missing, they will ding you. But if there's no code and no sticker, then I think they just ignore it. But I just wanted to point that out too as something else you'd have to look into. And why I didn't have additional protection around the page was because this specific book did not have a digital insert. All right, so here's the sandwich, pretty straightforward. Here's that 65-pound cardstock between the cover and interior pages. Essentially, you've got the magazine backing board in the middle and the 65-pound cardstock between both covers. And I've got the magazine backing board and SRP paper ready to go, and that will be that. So I'm just waiting for the press to heat up fully. I'm giving it a full 10-minute preheat. and then I will put this book in the press. Okay, the press is fully heated up and ready to go, so I'm going to load up the sandwich. So I'll take the magazine board and put it glossy side down, facing the plate. 1 page of fresh SRP paper. And I was just out of habit doing this the wrong way. With this clamshell, I wanted to try something a little different and put the book and the setup perpendicular to the closure. You wouldn't necessarily have to do this with other, like the swivel presses, but I'm going to try it here. So I'm going to take it and put the spine facing towards the back of the clamshell, like so. Another piece of SRP paper, and then magazine backing board with the glossy side away from the book. Then I've got another steel plate that I'm going to put down here, and we're ready to go. The last bit is to figure out the pressure. So right now if I close it, it's very easy to close. I barely have to put any pressure at all. And you want to just kind of find the spot, I believe, where you've turned the knob and it's just enough pressure that it gets just a little bit of a squeeze, but you're still able to easily close it. So I need to count the rotations myself on here. So I'm going to do 1 full, try it again. And I think that's pretty good. That I had to put a little bit of force down, but not too much. So there it is. So 1 full rotation on the knob with that setup. Timer is counting down 10 minutes. And then after the 10 minutes, I'm going to leave it in the press to see how it turns out. So I will see you in a bit. Okay, the book has been in the press, cold press, for about 2.5 hours now, which I know is not, the full length that you would normally leave a book in the press. But in this case, I'm just sort of experimenting with either positioning the book in the press, the pressure knob, using plates, backing boards, and things like that. Let's get the book out first and take a look. First thing I'll notice is it just didn't quite get those sort of folds and wrinkles out that I thought. I will say the good news is it doesn't look like it has a real definitive pressing crease along the spine like it normally does. I think that's what I was getting to. It definitely does look a little bit creased there, but nothing too strong. But this is kind of down here where you start to see it. And I've talked to some people about this, and they're like, no, that's just the light. It's just the angle of the book. Or also, when I said, no, it's not actually, then I get well, CGC doesn't care about that. I don't particularly like it. But what this tells me, essentially, is that there wasn't enough pressure, in my opinion. It's flat, but it almost got like a little bit of a quick press, like you were just trying to smooth out the cover. But in terms of some of these defects, I am expecting to not see those sort of folds right in there. I expect those to be gone. Certainly the corner probably needed some humidity, but that didn't come out either. So what I'm going to do is try this one more time, and I'm going to turn the knob a full maybe 180, 360. I'm not quite sure yet. I want to be able to make sure I close the press, but it didn't quite work out. I'm going to reuse all these supplies. Again, this is just sort of a test book just to see how it goes. But the first press did not work out, so I'm going to press it again and see if that helps. All right, welcome back. So the book has been in the cold press overnight. So roughly 10 to 12 hours, essentially. So this is after the press where I had increased the pressure and turned the book over, but essentially just gave it a second press. So let's take a look. Let's see what we got. All right, so at first glance, that looks a lot better. So you can see right there, all of the folds and the wrinkles are out. So let me get rid of the contents of the sandwich and take a look a little bit more closely. So now when I take it out of the sandwich, it looks almost like then the book relaxes right back and it starts to fold right in here. Right, there's another one. Yeah, right up here. Now this up here by the staple, this just may be now a permanent sort of crease. I would hope not, but it's having a hard time getting that one out. Again, the corner as well. The corner is just still a little folded there. It looks like it's a little bit better though. The back, I think that there was a finger bend that's still not quite out, just a little bit right there. And then again, I'm just taking note of the spine because I really get annoyed with that presser's crease that shows up along the spine, but it doesn't look too bad. It actually looks much better. It's just not there yet. So what do I do next? Do I increase the pressure one more time, maybe another quarter turn or half turn? Do I start to introduce humidity? This is where I just need to further experiment because it's just not settling in the way that I would like right here and right here. It's almost like, and even down here too, just as I removed everything. So when I put the items in for the sandwich, it was almost like it was just holding the book up in some way. Overall, it looks much better. It doesn't feel like a reader copy anymore. It's just I'm being a little bit of a perfectionist right in here and in here. So I think it definitely warrants another pass. Everything else looks fine. It appears like the pages are still holding up. The staple position is okay. So I'm, again, just trying to find that breaking point where it's either too much pressure or we need to introduce some other element. But overall, it's looking better. Right here on the edge, I think there was something. It's looks like it's flattening out. So I think what I want to do, because for me, humidity is always sort of my go-to. Like if I can't figure something else, if I can't figure out what to do with a book, like up here with the corner that's just being stubborn, I end up blasting the book with humidity, and I don't know if I want to do that quite yet. I feel like I want to press it one more time, and I want to increase the pressure to see if I can once and for all just get these bends out, and you can see it better there in the light now, up there and up there. And if that doesn't work, then I think I will introduce some humidity just once and for all to get these things out. I think that the book was just settled in right there. You can really see what I'm talking about. It's just settled in with those bends, and humidity probably would trick the book into releasing this tightness in these folds. But I really want to see if I can do it without humidity. So I'm going to try one more time with a little bit of increased pressure. And then if that doesn't do the trick, then I'll introduce some humidity. So back to the press for round 3. All right, I'm back. This is the end of the third round of pressing. It's been in the cold press for about 2 hours, which again, I know it's not long enough. The point is to practice and see if at least the initial waves and folds on the cover and some other things are taken out by the proper sandwich placement and pressure of the press. So I want to go ahead and open this up and see if the third time is the charm. The only real difference here is on the pressure knob. You can see it's now pointing down towards me. I had decided to do 2 full turns, and I did notice when I pushed the press down, I did have to give it a little bit of extra effort to close the press, which to me indicates that if I were really to tighten it anymore, I may not even be able to close it. That's kind of where I'm at in terms of the pressure. So let me open this one up and take a look. So again, at first glance, with everything in the sandwich, everything looks nice. Now what happened during the second round is once I removed the sandwich, the pages almost started to fold up again, but this looks pretty good. I will say too, I don't know if you noticed when I opened, the other change was I shifted the contents of the sandwich and the book towards the front of the press. Before I had everything kind of this way in my previous method, and now I'm trying to almost replicate what a swivel press is doing, which is getting away from the back of the clamshell and really pressing it more on the front. All right, so I'm going to take the items out and just show the book as is. And again, as soon as I do that, you can see that the waves, they just start to come right back, the folding. Now again, not as bad as before, but the problem is the more pressure that I put on the book, the more creasing we're going to get along the spine. So right there, you can see up at the top left, this is kind of what I deal with, where there just starts to create a little bit of a crease or fold. And I've gotten lots of feedback about that in the past. Feedback that is included, don't worry about that, to this is what I do to get rid of it, and so on. So I am concerned, again, that this method, no matter what I do, is created, and you could see there's a definite like gap or hang over, I don't know what to call it exactly, but all in all, I think it's looking better. Here's that corner again. Yeah, corner is still there, that corner crunch. And to get corner crunch, I even have a video on this, to get the corner crunch out like really officially, what you have to do is open the book like this, spray it with some humidity, and pretty much like press the book this way, and then come back and give it a press normally to get out like really, really bad corner crunch on modern books like that. And I just wanted to see if I could get it out using the kind of standard quick press method, and that's just not happening. So pretty stubborn at this point. I am, again, tempted to just keep going and pressing this book until I can get the folds out completely, and almost to the point where let's just put so much pressure on it that maybe the book gets destroyed. I don't quite know what to do, but I will say everything's protected. I don't see anything from like staple marks, so everything's fine that I can tell. It's just some stubbornness here right near the staple, right here, same spots, just exactly the same spot. So again, this is the third go around with this book. I will say that originally I graded it an 8, and right now I'm probably looking more around a 9. So I am at least happy that it is improving. And whatever I was noticing before from like a finger bend perspective, it used to be right up there. I think it's coming out. It's almost completely gone, or I still, because I knew it was there, I can kind of see it, but that is coming along. And then here as well, it's at least lying down a little bit, but there is just a little bit of a mark there. So I am being really nitpicky here. Don't quite know what to do, but again, as soon as I take this book out and start examining it, the longer that I hold it without the sandwich, you'll see right here, this is those two major folds. So this is where there becomes a breaking point where it's like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to humidify this area of the book, increase the pressure a little bit, and give it one more go and see if I can finally get it out. And I think that's what I'm willing to do at this point, is once and for all. But what I've learned here is you're not going to be able to get these sorts of creases or folds out just with a standard quick press. These are, I think, a little bit more severe. So it's almost like I want to categorize these books a little bit differently, right? So instead of just, just marking them as a potential press candidate, what type of press? Quick press, press with humidity tank, things like that, and not just, or even like a clean press. Yes, it's a clean and press, but is it a clean humidity type press? Like, just be a bit more specific with what the book needs, because if I were to identify this as a book that's pressable, I would need to know what kind of effort it would take totally in terms of time and materials, because that's just not coming out with a quick press. So I need to further kind of refine my initial screening process. So I'm going to attack it with humidity and see once and for all if we can get these issues out. And I think what I'll do also is maybe give it a little bit of a corner turn on the pressure knob as well, to just increase that and try and get things out once and for all. And just, again, what I'm trying to find is what is the breaking point where it's too much pressure and without it creating additional creasing up here along the spine. Because again, I've been told by professional pressers that this is just a shadow in their picture, and this is exactly what it looks like. It's not a shadow. It creates this almost like it's a smooth crease, but it's definitely being introduced in the process, I think. I hope it's not my eyes and mind playing tricks on me, but I feel like I can see it. So let me get some humidity on this thing and give it one more go. Good morning. Here we are. This is after the fourth press, and the book stayed in for not quite 24 hours in the cold press, but certainly for the duration of the day before this recording, plus overnight. So it really sat in here for quite some time. Just to kind of recap the little adjustments, you can see the knob is now pointed away from the camera. So I did give it a quarter turn, an additional quarter turn on the pressure. So now I'm at about 2 1/4 turns completely So again, I'm tracking and documenting all of that now with my makeshift pressure indicator there. And then I did blast the spine and specifically that blunted corner with humidity. So I gave it a real, I mean, to the point where the pages were starting to curl and everything, because this is kind of what happens. I'll press and I'll press and I'm like, can I get this out just with a heat press? And this will be the experiment to see if the humidity really was what ended up kind of relaxing the book to the point where it was willing to accept a more typical like flat and expected state. So anyway, let's look at the book and see if the humidity, the fourth press, and a long overnight stay here in the cold press did the trick. Again, from this is happening every time when it gets out of the sandwich. Looks great, like that crease that was right there above the staple is gone. I don't see any folding whatsoever. And again, that corner I think is just going to be a problem corner no matter what, but it does look better. Now, what happens is I'll take the sandwich out, the two cardstock and the single mag board, and then it sort of starts to fold over again. So let's see if it had enough, and it looks like it's holding up. Yeah, that looks much better. Now, it still does have that little bit of a presser's crease, which bothers me. But I think I just need to get over it. This looks pretty good. Pretty happy with this. So, you know, this isn't getting a 9.8. Again, this whole experiment is to practice. This up here, it's just, there's just too much damage. But I think it's better. I mean, these would be like, this would be an example of like a copy you'd put on eBay where it's like near mint plus question mark, send to CGC question mark, right? Where it's not, this is probably 9.4-ish. Tops, but I'm pretty happy with this. I got originally, what was it, like 6 or 7 of those folds or wrinkling, dents, whatever you want to call it, some sort of creasing that was happening along the spine. It's gone. The finger bend looking thing, you know, it was right in there. I don't know if you could see it, but it looks gone. I would probably put this in another cold press for a day or something, but probably just putting it back in the bag and board. You'd really have to know that it was there, because if you're just looking at it quickly or a professional grader, you're like, page looks fairly consistent there. Same thing over here. This was where the problem was. You could still see like the history of it, but again, I'm shining a light on it, moving it back and forth and actually telling you where it was. It's like if I told you here, like, remember that thing that was here? Like, it's just because we know it was there. But just if you're looking at it the first time, I think it looks pretty nice. So I'm going to call this one done. I'm going to put it in a bag and board. I'm going to give it an official grade of 9.4 because that corner just is what it is. I'm not going to really try and do much more with it. I think that if this were an important book or a key, I would essentially open up the book to the centerfold. And you can see here, even with that pressure, no damage inside and out here. But the way that you do it is you basically press the book flat to get rid of that once and for all blast with the humidity. But you can see there, there's a little bit of, because it was blunted, it broke color as well. So I'm going to give this one a 9.4 as is. So not bad from where I started, where I really thought that book was an 8.0. And taking it from an 8 to a 9.4, I think is pretty awesome. So maybe I will unretire and work on some modern books in this way. You know, I sometimes think, well, if there's so much damage that it can't get a 9.8, then why bother? But it is just kind of fun just to improve it and see what you can do with any book with any kind of damage. So I'm going to leave it there. Star Wars Halcyon Legacy #3, the variant edition, moving it from an 8.0 to a 9.4. Pretty cool. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.